I am in conversation with Black South African filmmakers. It is 4 of them, and the reason why I am making this film is because I have an assumption that post-1994, Black South African filmmakers should be able to express themselves very well. Now I want to know what kind of constraints are they experiencing as they express themselves in their films.
My experience in filmmaking started a long time ago. It started when I was a little kid.
What does he print? Valdez is coming. What must a man do to avenge another's death when he himself killed a man accidentally? Dun, 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 dun.
What we did was we had a gang of boys, played soccer, did everything together, you know, from the ages of 9 until about 14, 15. The 2 older guys in our gang, we would pool money together, send them to go and watch a movie, and then they would come back and then tell us the movie in episodes. Next to the Mbaula there at about 6 in the evening until 7 or something, they would tell us the beginning of the film until a quarter of the way through. One would do the sound and one would do the picture, you know. So a guy would say, Valdez enters the door, and then the other guy would go and quick, 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 you know, like a cowboy film, you know. And then I think that's when the spark was made in my mind. Obviously, formally later on, I studied film in the US and specifically in Chicago at a company called Katemkwen Films. And there I worked as an intern.
I've been involved in the industry for probably 20 years now. And I've played many roles, starting from, you know, being a simple production assistant, a PA, working my way up to, you know, assistant directing, and till I started directing.
You know, Drum was my first feature film, you know, so and I was very, very stubborn about making this feature film, this particular story as my first feature film.
Ah, Henry, come join us. Good to see you.
Ram Mandela.
What's our sports writer doing in a little protest?
I don't write about sports anymore.
I read your article on Pethal. I was surprised it got printed. Don't tell me your boss is telling you to go political on me.
I'm just reporting the facts.
I think to date, I've been now working actively in the film industry for 17 years, and mainly working a lot in documentaries and feature-length documentaries, short documentaries. I've done quite a few short films. The last one being with Dumisani Dlamini, who produced it, the late Dumisani Dlamini, and with Teddy Matera as a writer, and I directed it. That was my last short film, but I've done a lot of documentaries after that. And recently, for the last 3-4 years actually, I've been doing commercials. So yeah, look, I'd say basically I've been involved in film for the last 17 years.
The history of filmmaking in South Africa is inextricably connected with black men at the center. What makes me see myself as a black filmmaker, I think one chooses that particular identity as a state of mind, as Steve Biko called it, you know. In terms of the kind of expression, creative expression you want into films.
I don't think I can escape from the fact that I'm black. You know, I can only tell things from my perspective. Film is a very, very subjective format, and I make no excuses that my point of view is that of a black South African filmmaker, because that's who I am.
I see myself as a black person. Oh, no, I don't see myself, I am. And I'm a filmmaker. So does that mean I'm a black filmmaker? It depends what you mean by black filmmaker as well. Maybe there's a point where I felt I was, where maybe I had a militancy that was about black filmmaker put together, so I'm making these kind of films.
I'm not a black filmmaker. I'm a filmmaker. I've never heard anybody saying about Spielberg is a white filmmaker. It's a very negative term, you know. What it implies is this, that there are filmmakers and others. So there is a filmmaker, then a woman filmmaker, then a Japanese filmmaker, then a black filmmaker, then, you know what I mean? So there is this standard, filmmaker, and then there are others. And no, I'm a filmmaker.
Because it is a new industry in this country, one of the constraints that I have come across is that you know, we lack a history on which to refer to as filmmakers. You can't look back and say that, you know, hey, this is how people did it in the past. These are the challenges they came across. These are the problems they came across, and this is how they solved them.
The constraints are institutional. Institutions that are there to support filmmakers or film just don't even know who the filmmakers are, because some of the appointees are very political. Whether it's the Gauteng Film Office, don't know about the NVF.
What frustrates me even more is that black people now who are in the position of funding films in various institutions, even individuals, they still have not come to realization or belief psychologically that, you know, as a black person, they can trust you with X amount of money to make a film.
So it's a two-pronged kind of problem. It's filmmakers like me that aren't doing enough as they should, and it's also institutions that are not doing enough like they should.
The real problem resides within us as individuals. You know, do you make the time for yourself to make the kind of films you want? Because without a script in your hand, the idea sits in your head.
Filmmaking deal with money. It's a lot of money. It's a very expensive venture.
I think black filmmakers do experience constraints in expressing themselves for a number of reasons. I think we mentioned some of them already. Production, ideological reasons, economic reasons, etc. You know, but that's what everybody goes through generally. I think what is quite unique in our experience as black filmmakers is that the industry that we work in fundamentally is still in the hands of a lot of white people, you know, and with that comes the baggage of their whiteness being imposed on us. You know, I can't tell you how many countless times, you know, I have 20 years of experience behind me. My first interview at a commercials company, I was told that the only job that they can give me is that I need to start as a runner. And I thought, what the hell is this all about? You know, some fucking white kid at 22 years old trying to tell me I need to be a runner. He doesn't even know what a frame looks like, has never, but this is the kind of conditioning that is pervasive. Now, people may say that that's not happening anymore, but trust me, speak to your graduates from the school. Ask them what goes on. I've taught at WITS, I work in the industry. The divide is enormous. The divide is enormous. And that's what black people go through in many other industries. So are there constraints? Of course. But I don't think we can live by those constraints.
I guess from when there was a thing called the New South Africa, for me already, there were a lot of complications about the country that was supposedly new. And most of that stuff was around my own life. I was living in Piri, but I was feeling myself leaving Piri slowly while living in it. So I was wondering, why is it that I'm choosing to live a place that I'm physically in every day? And then I made the film Wangwina, which is called Sincerely Yours, which was like a love letter to my community and in trying to understand where we are and where we are going. So I did a film. It was supposed to be only about literally my physical street, but I couldn't end up having to do other streets. It's funny how some things don't change. As far back as I can remember, Ndombe has always been sweeping the front portion of her yard. And Bondras still loves his lawn.
When I look at what Leon Schuster's been doing with our dignity, about laughing at black people and making us look stupid all the fucking time, I thought, fuck Leon Schuster, I'm gonna make a film and I'm gonna show black people laughing at our own shit. That's what I'm gonna do. And I achieved it, you know? I mean, from the beginning of Max and Mona right to the end, from a guy who gets struck by lightning for peeing against a tree, you know, to waking up from the dead, you know, for me, that's an achievement. It's a resurrection.
If you watch L1, you're going to see Nchabeni Waluru there. Because even during, like I said, during the production, I was very meticulous in that this is done this way, it is done that way, and rejecting certain things that are common.
I believe that, you know, the 50s was probably the greatest generation in South African history. And I mean this in terms of black self-expression. You must remember that, you know, and drum just had a drum set in Sophiatown, you know, was the story of this journalist who worked for this really funky, hip, young, first black rag that was designed for black people. And it had all the smartest and wittiest and cleverest journalists who became South African literary icons, you know. And they wrote about everything that was happening in Johannesburg, and particularly in a township called Sophiatown, which was the representation of this black explosion that had just, you know, erupted. And this expression expressed itself in fashion, you know, films, American Hollywood films, gangster films, westerns. They influenced fashion, they influenced music. There was also a big music scene. The musical birthplace of Hugh Masekela, Jonas Gwangwa, Dudu Pukwane, like Kipu Moeketsi, African jazz pioneers. Film is a vehicle of expression of the director. I would like to regard myself as an auteur filmmaker whose artistic expression do we see on the screen. It is the director's artistic vision. An auteur filmmaker is a filmmaker who has a distinct fingerprint.
I've worked with a lot of filmmakers, before I became a filmmaker myself. I don't remember at one stage where, somebody sits down, a Spike Lee or a Robert Benton, or sitting down and say, I'm an auteur, I'm writing the story. I've never, they just write the story. That's what is modern. And all these labels and terms belong to others, section of the film community, film critics, film historians. And I guess when they want to understand.
Authorship doesn't rely only on the films that you've made. They are dependent on the experiences and the summation of those experiences that you've had. Because in the latest film that I've made, which is called Telegraph to the Sky, after a poem by Sandile Dikeni, who's a personal friend. It's about a young soldier who comes back from a war. That kind of story for me, as an auteur, talks about the state of mind and being that I am feeling currently in South Africa as a black man. It is about the post-traumatic disorder syndrome that I'm consistently feeling when I'm in South Africa. I'm generally feeling very traumatized when I'm here.
From my experiences of growing up in Africa, I could sense that, hey man, when you just heard South Africans talking about foreigners, there was this undertone of, you know, same thing that happened in America, in England. Also, there are lots of xenophobia there, especially when economic conditions are bad. Same thing was happening here. These people come here, they take our jobs, or why don't they go back? You know, all this. The last people to get it in society, in any society, are the foreigners, you know. South Africa is the same. After I had made The Foreigner, because The Foreigner was made in '96, and this incident took place in '99, where I was almost shot. The gun jammed in my chest, went click, click. And I ran into the house, dropping my bag there. But then I called my phone, because my phone had been in my bag and they'd obviously taken my bag. And I said, hey man, you know, what happened? You nearly shot me there. And he said, hey, sorry, you must check a idea, because you're born out to myself. And I say, so he says, sorry, apologizing. You know, there are a lot of foreigners in South Africa, and I look like a foreigner. So, and he said, we want to just wipe them out. I'm 120% positive that, you know, the representation of xenophobia in that film were real, because I have personally experienced them.
And then I as a little no, I'm
What one? Intwana sana dlala Josh Cox. Safathi long. Hey hostel. Ihlala hostel. Angathi dlala phela si. Yasinga ke dlala. Yasinga ke dlala. Bye. C52. Yo. Yes. Ngashaya inkawu sana. Time. Umuntu oyi1 ngashaya inkawu. Njengoba ni 52 kini. Yeah. Ngizala umama oyi1. Ah, time eli1. Umama different. Shocking. My 11. Already about
Ngithi kubi 4-5 la bekuyikari ngabe ifana nami yakhumbi yako speech wo.
Kamenze
ngabe scrap.
Ifafa betamala.
The idea that my father feeds to children fascinated me, and the fact that growing up we always knew it and we were fine with it. And also I just wanted to show that this unusual situation of a family can be fun as well. I'm still to date very proud of that film, because I think it's the only film in the world, I think, on a documentary that kind of takes what one could call a complex situation or complicated and shows the lighter and the sad side at the same time, and celebrates the idea of a black family.
I'm with my brother! I'm so excited.
Having heard what they say, what are the solutions to these highlighted constraints? What is the way forward?
We're turning the camera around this time. We're filming what we want to film, and we will tell the stories we want to tell the stories. If you don't want to watch them, we've got over 500 million Africans as potential viewers and audiences on this continent. And the Nigerians have come to prove that to us. And so we're saying, if you don't want our films, we'll go to Ghana. We'll show them our films there. We'll go to Namibia. They'll bring their films here. We're going to create our own internecine way of finding solutions, because this thing of trying to find it elsewhere, it doesn't work. African problems, African solutions.
When they talk about low budget, it's about between 300,000 to 5 million. South Africa, most of the films are 5 million, 6, 7, 8. Those are, you know, but from 300,000 one to that. I think we should begin to learn how to make films for 50,000 rand. It's not about the budget. It's about the concept.
There's an expectation of African cinema that it must be of low quality, of low production value, and stuff like that. And I want to take that away from it and say that, you know, we can, as Africans, make films of a very sophisticated, technical, and films of a very high technical quality. There's no reason why our films should not look and feel and smell like the best of the best. What do black filmmakers have to do in the meantime? Black filmmakers have to make films. We have to make films. We have to sweat blood. We have to go through this fire. We have to do whatever it takes to make films.
I think if you don't have private support, which a lot of white filmmakers do have, over and above the NFVF, because there's a market now. Afrikaans make films, for example. So I think they have to, black filmmakers that want to make films have to lobby black money, whatever, the little that exists. You know, educate black money for investing in film.
I think we must be really careful because, you know, once you adopt that victim mindset and attitude, you will never be able to express yourself and overcome those constraints, and to look at those constraints as the deficiencies of others as opposed to a deficiency within yourself.